Great, thank you very much. So, hello everyone. My name is Tim Burnham, and today I'm going to be speaking about private refugee sponsorship in Canada. So this is the organization that I work for. It's called the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program, and we're funded by IRCC to provide support for private refugee sponsorship groups. We offer different services and are located in different places across Canada. We give training sessions, online training courses, information and guidance for the public. And we also produce training materials. We give information sharing and we respond to individual inquiries about refugee sponsorship. Okay, this is our agenda, what we're going to talk about today. We'll look at what is private refugee sponsorship, who can be sponsored as a refugee, who can sponsor, what are the sponsorship costs, and what are the settlement responsibilities here in Canada. These are what the numbers look like of the amount of refugees coming into Canada. So if you just look at that bottom number, in 2023, there were around 76,000, and the same as 2024. This past year, in 2025, there were only 58,000. So the purpose of this slide is to show that the numbers are going down of the amount of refugees being allowed into Canada right now. So the private sponsorship of refugees is the resettlement of a refugee to Canada with financial costs and settlement support provided by private groups for 12 months. Canada is unique in that it has a program for sponsoring refugees that is run by the government, and you can also sponsor refugees privately. So when the government sponsors a refugee from overseas, the government covers the cost and the settlement support. In the private sponsorship of refugees, private Canadian citizens and permanent residents, they cover the cost as well as the settlement support. So this private sponsorship program allows Canadian citizens and permanent residents to engage in the resettlement of refugees from abroad. And this means that the sponsors can name the refugees that they wish to sponsor. And that makes it possible for families to bring relatives or friends to Canada from abroad if they're refugees. So this is how the program works. The sponsors give financial support to the refugees to cover their expenses for the sponsorship period, which is 12 months after they arrive in Canada, or until they become self-supporting. And then the sponsors also provide the refugees with the settlement support for the whole sponsorship period. So for 1 year after arrival, the sponsors help to settle the refugees in Canada. So who can sponsor refugees in Canada? There are two kinds of groups. One is called sponsorship agreement holder organizations, and then there are groups of 5 and community sponsors. Now, sponsorship agreement holders are organizations that can sponsor a limited number of refugees each year. For groups of 5 and community sponsors, they can sponsor however many refugees they are able to based on their financial and settlement capacity. With sponsorship agreement holders, the refugee applicants do not need specific refugee status, but with groups of 5 and community sponsors, the refugees must have refugee status. That's the big difference. Now, it's important to note that currently there is a pause on accepting groups of 5 and community sponsors. So during this year, 2026, you can only sponsor refugees through the first type of group, through sponsorship agreement holder organizations. So if you want to sponsor refugees, you first have to find a sponsorship agreement holder organization. And I'm going to show you how you find one here. So you can go to the Government of Canada's website. It's easiest to find it by just putting in Google sponsorship agreement holder, and this website will come up. And then you simply select what province you live in. So in our case, it would be New Brunswick. And the list of sponsorship agreement holders will come up for your province. Once you have found an organization to sponsor refugees, you would then have to contact them and tell them about your situation and tell them that you would like to sponsor refugees through them. So here are some tips if you are going to reach out to a sponsorship organization. The first tip is to be patient. It can take time to talk to someone, as these organizations are often very busy. The second is to make sure you're clear about the number of people in the family that you want to sponsor, and what their nationality is and their current country. And then you should ask if there is a wait list. Most organizations have wait lists of people who are waiting to sponsor refugees. Four, you should explain what support you can provide. So let them know if you are working, if you have saved money for the sponsorship, and if you have friends, family, and coworkers who are going to help you settle the refugees here in Canada. These organizations are very often contacted by people who say, help bring my family to Canada. But the best thing that you can do is to tell them how you're going to help them to bring your family. So next we'll look at who can be sponsored as a refugee to come to Canada. So a refugee is someone who meets these two definitions. They either have a well-founded fear of persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, or their membership in a certain social group or political opinion, or they're someone who has been seriously and personally affected by war or suffered human rights violations. These are the two categories of refugees.
Sorry to interrupt, Tim. We just had a request to go back one slide, if you could.
Okay,
Izelle, can you let me know when you're done with that slide? Okay, you can go ahead, Tim. Thank you.
okay. So again, these are the two categories of refugees. So the refugees who you want to sponsor would have to fall into one of these two categories. So in order to be eligible to come to Canada, you have to be a refugee who meets these requirements. Someone who has left their country, they have a sponsoring group in Canada who's going to bring them to Canada. They're unable or unwilling to return to their home country. And they can't stay in the current country where they live.
Sorry to interrupt again, Tim. We just got a request to go back again. And someone said some feedback here. The slides with a lot of wording takes a little bit longer, so if maybe we could leave the
Sure.
slide on for a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so you want this slide up for longer?
Yeah, and Azal, you can just let me know when you're finished with that one. I think that we're probably good. I didn't get confirmation, but I think that's enough time. So
Okay,
thank you.
so I'll put these back on the screen. That again, a refugee coming to Canada would have to be someone who has left their country of origin. They have a sponsoring group in Canada. They're not able or willing to return to their home country. They can't stay in their current country, and they can't resettle in a different safe country. Okay, so these are essentially the 5 requirements for refugees coming to Canada. So next we'll look at who can be included in a single application when you fill out an application to sponsor refugees. So this slide shows what the Canadian government considers to be a family, and this is who can be on one application. So there is the principal refugee applicant, as well as their spouse or common law partner, and any of their dependent children. That's children who are under 22 years old and are not married. Okay, so every application can have one family of refugees who are being sponsored. Next, we're going to look at the cost of the sponsorship. So the cost of the sponsorship financially covers the cost of food, rent, and household utilities and other day-to-day living expenses, as well as clothing, furniture, and other household goods. And these are the 3 different ways that you can gather the money for the sponsorship. You can put them all into a bank. You can have members of your sponsorship group contribute from their personal income, or you can do a combination of those two things. Put some money in the bank and some money contributed from your personal income. Okay, now everyone asks us, how much does it cost to sponsor refugees? So I'm going to look at the cost of sponsorship of refugees to Canada now. The cost, as you can see, is based on the family size. So if you look at the family size of 1, you'll see that the total cost is $16,500. If you go down and look at a family of 4, you'll see that the total cost comes to $28,700. So if you are looking at sponsoring people to come to Canada, you could use this table to determine how much it's going to cost to bring the family based on how many family members there are. You can also give donations of items like clothing or furniture or household needs, and that will make the sponsorship less expensive. So when you donate items, you can subtract a certain amount of money from the cost of the sponsorship, and the sponsorship becomes cheaper. The most expensive item that can be donated is shelter. That means if you have a place where the refugees can live, then you can deduct a lot of money from the sponsorship and it becomes a lot less expensive. I will just look briefly at the application process. So when you submit an application um, to sponsor refugees, the first part of the application is at what's called ROCCO. That's the government center in Ottawa that analyzes refugee applications. The second stage of the application is at what's called the visa office. That is in the country where the refugees live. So there are two parts to the application, the part that is here in Canada and the part that is looked at in the country where the refugees are living. So we have discussed the financial cost of the sponsorship, and I'll look now at some of the settlement obligations, how you help settle refugees when they come to Canada. And I'll just put these up on the slide so you can see them. So one is you'll have to welcome them at the airport when they arrive, help to apply for a health card and other documents, help them to find housing, enroll them in English or French classes if they don't speak one of those languages, help connect them with a settlement agency, and helping them to find a doctor, a dentist, or other health services. So these are the tasks that you would have to do if you sponsor refugees to come to Canada. You would have to help them with each of these things, and we call them settlement obligations. Okay, so that is going to be my presentation for today. I would recommend if you are interested in sponsoring refugees to come to Canada, and if you have any questions, you visit our website, which is rstp.ca, and you'll find links there to a webinar series that we have each month where you'll learn a lot more about refugee sponsorship. So again, please, if you're interested, visit our website. And I will also put my contact information on the screen in a minute so that you can contact me directly with your questions if you want to follow up. Okay, and I'm happy to take questions now if you have any. And I will just leave my contact information here on the screen so that you can take it down.
Thank you so much, Tim, for your presentation. We'll allow a few minutes now for some questions to roll in. Might take a little bit longer because we have interpreters that will need to help out.
Sure.
So Someone's asked, would you be allowed to sponsor someone if you do not have a job, but you have the money to sponsor?
Yes, if you have the money, then the money could be, as I said, put into a bank account, and you would have to just provide proof to the government that the money is there in the bank account, and it would be possible, yes.
Are there any other questions? I'll allow a few more minutes for that. Okay, we had another question. Someone said, I am a housewife and have a family member who was in the process to come, but could not come at that time. Can we start the process again for them to come?
Let me just look at this question again.
Mm.
Yes, if you had filled out an application before and the person wasn't able to come at that time, sure, you could start the process over again for the same person. Yes, you can do that.
All right, and there's another question. What if someone is a refugee and has a child here in Canada? Is there any possibility the parent could join his or her child in Canada under this program?
Yes, it's certainly possible, as long as the person is a refugee. Another possible way for them to come, since it's a child and their parent, would be through a family class sponsorship. Those tend to be easier and cheaper, so we usually recommend people to look at family class sponsorships. But they could also possibly come through this program as well. Yes.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Oh, he just, someone asked you to repeat the question or repeat the answer that you just said, if you
Yep.
could.
So it is possible for a child to sponsor their parent, that as long as they're 18 years or older, they can be part of a sponsorship group to sponsor their parent to Canada, yes. There's another program called Family Class Sponsorship, which they may want to look into because it may be easier.
Are there any more questions? Maybe we'll give a few more minutes just in case. I think we're good. And if anybody has any questions, like Tim had mentioned, he put his contact up on the screen. Okay, Matthew says that there is another question, so we'll wait for that to roll in. Okay, someone said, what are options for low-income families to sponsor refugees?
The income um, or the financial requirements are the same for everyone. So the option that we might recommend to people who don't have the financial capability would be things like fundraisers, or to partner with a local church or local organization that may be willing to help with the financial side. As for the cost of the sponsorship, they don't have any low income options. It's the same across the board.
Thank you. And there is another question that just came in. Can a client apply to sponsor her sister's daughter who is 25 years old? The sister has passed away.
Sure, they could certainly apply. Anyone who's over 22 would just be considered an adult on their own application. So as long as the person is a refugee, you could apply to sponsor them as well.
I think we're good. Like I said, and Tim said, his contact is up on the screen. So if anybody has any questions or thinks of anything later, you can email him. He also has his phone number up on the screen as well, and the website too. And I think we're good to go. Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you for everybody joining today. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.